Donald Trump's plan to pull American troops out of Syria is drawing fire from both sides of the aisle in Washington. Senior politicians are calling on the U.S. president to reverse his decision. They're concerned that the pullout will allow Turkey to launch its long-planned offensive against Kurdish fighters in the region, fighters that have been key allies of the U.S. in its battle against the so-called Islamic State.
Leaving in a hurry, American troops started pulling out of Syria within hours of the official announcement. They leave behind these empty bases near the Turkish border, bases that had been a guarantee of safety for Kurdish forces. US President Donald Trump abruptly cancelled that guarantee, saying in a tweet, "It is time for us to get out of these ridiculous, endless wars, many of them tribal, and bring our soldiers home." US troops were in Syria to support Kurdish forces in the fight against the so-called Islamic State. But Turkey has long resented the presence of armed Kurdish forces near its border. It considers them terrorists. Kurdish groups in the region have protested the move. They feel abandoned by the US, who teamed up with Kurdish fighters in the battle against the IS. They fear a Turkish invasion is imminent.
This green light that Trump gave to Erdogan will actually complicate the crisis in the region. It will provide Islamic State with an opportunity to regenerate and control areas such as Raqqa and Deir az-Zor again.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan gave the Kurds a stark warning.
There is a phrase that we always say: we can come any night without warning. And our determination remains, because it is absolutely out of the question for us to further tolerate the threats from these terrorist groups.
Trump's decision has earned him widespread criticism, even within his Republican Party.
So the Kurds stepped up when nobody else would to fight ISIS. If we abandon them, good luck getting anybody to help America in the future with radical Islam, Al-Qaeda, and ISIS.
Hours later, Trump appeared to try to placate critics by issuing a stern warning to Ankara.
Right now, we're at a position where if Turkey does anything out of what they should be doing, we will hit them so hard on the economy.
Mixed messages at the top. And meanwhile, on the ground in Syria, the Kurds are waiting for the next blow to fall, in a region that's seen its share of misery and violence already.
I'm joined now by Marc Pirigny. He's a veteran EU diplomat and now a visiting scholar at the Carnegie Europe think tank. He's also served as EU ambassador to both Syria and Turkey. Mr. Pirigny, thank you very much for joining us today on DW News. Why does the Turkish president want to move his troops into northern Syria, and what does he intend to do there?
Well, essentially, what he intends to do is ethnic engineering. That is, removing as many Kurds as he can from a strip along the border, he says 30 kilometers, and then have Arabs and Turkmens in power in these villages and cities. This is not new. This is something Turkey has been saying for a long time. It's also the long time worry about Kurdistan emerging on the border in Iraq, in Syria, and in Turkey, of course. But what we're seeing today, or since a couple of days, is basically two very strong leaders, Erdogan and Trump, with strong narratives. And we have to remember that both of them are in great trouble politically at home. So essentially, they're trying to divert attention. We've heard a lot of words. We've seen a lot of images of armored vehicles and tanks and so on, but we haven't seen any operation yet. So situation is still in flux, but the dangers are very, very high, as you just illustrated in your reporting. First with ISIS, of course. The rebirth of ISIS is a possibility. Second, of course, more suffering. And then I believe another dent in NATO's trust in Turkey. As you know, Turkey has been an ally in NATO for many decades, but recently the move towards a rapprochement with Russia and so on has dented this trust, and this operation here will do more damage, although there is no NATO operation in northern Syria, but it is watched very carefully here in Brussels.
Now, the European Union clearly has interests at stake in the region as well. What, if anything, is the EU doing to help stabilize that region?
Well, as you know, two EU member states as of today, France and the UK, have special forces in the region cooperating with the US forces. But of course, by virtue of the sheer numbers, they are dependent on US decisions. So that's the first difficulty. Then the real issue for European countries such as France, Belgium, Germany, UK, is that you have hundreds, if not a couple of thousand in total, European jihadists and families there, not along the border with Turkey, but further south, in particular the Al-Hol refugee camp. And these jihadists, nobody wants to see them return to Europe, and they are under the custody of YPG, the Syrian Kurdish forces. So any destabilization of this situation would create great dangers for Europe and a greater worry for our political leaders than refugees.
Mr. Pilani, thank you so much for your insights. That was Mark Pilani, a veteran EU diplomat and now a visiting scholar at Carnegie Europe.